Hey there, Solar Warriors. I'm Nico Johnson, and this is SunCast. Each week, I pull back the veil on the life and business insights of clean tech entrepreneurs building the most noble and impactful companies of our time. I hope what you learn from this conversation is a catalyst for your own growth. So thanks for tuning in, and welcome to our tribe. Hey, welcome back, Solar Warrior. Another Thursday, another opportunity for you to learn more about yet another solar and clean energy entrepreneur. And thanks so much for lending me your ears and the only non-renewable resource that you've got. That's your time. Wherever you are, I know that you could be listening to, watching, or engaging with lots of different ways to spend that time. I promise that we will take good care of it for you over the next hour. I hope that you will learn and grow with us. If you're new here, I know that you're going to get a lot of value out of this episode. Don't forward through a whole lot because you'll miss some stuff. And I'd love it if at the end you would give me your feedback. Let me know what you thought as a newbie to this show. Today's entrepreneur has been elevating the solar industry for more than 20 years in a lot of different roles. But more recently, it's his role as inventor of breakthrough solar ovens and outdoor gear that's caught my attention. Patrick Sherwin's thirst for solutions has put him at the center of several technology breakthroughs, and we'll get into the how and why of his entrepreneurial journey in just a few moments. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe to the show, as that's going to ensure you won't miss out on our twice weekly content just like this one. And of course, you can always check out more than 350 other founders' stories and startup advice over at mysuncast.com. For now, get ready to tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, as we tune into another powerful conversation here on SunCast. Well, I love having inventors on the show, and truth be told, I don't get enough opportunity to do that. I'm really excited today to be introducing you to my new friend, Mr. Patrick Sherwin. Patrick is the founder of GoSun, but he's got 20 years of experience prior to GoSun in building solar on-grid, off-grid, NABCEP certified, LEED AP, and a bevy of other acronyms that we can attach to his name. He's an entrepreneur and inventor after my own heart, and is chasing the dream of building a company that serves a true need in the marketplace. We'll get into all that, but first, welcome to SunCast, Mr. Patrick Sherwin.
Thank you, Nico. It's a real pleasure to be here. You guys have some phenomenal guests and some killer content coming out. I love that you're focused on this epic movement in the solar industry. We don't realize that we're really kind of an anomaly coming out of a world full of fossil fuels and carbon-based economy. And I think we're really leading a complete new future where we're real pioneers. And so I think you're really instilling and creating that movement.
Wow. Thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate that, especially coming from someone who has been at it a few years longer than I have, for sure. Well, tell me, Patrick, for those who maybe have never heard of Patrick or GoSun, could you give us a sense of your first exposure or foray into solar power, when you decided that this is where you're going to focus your career?
Well, that goes back for me to high school when I learned about the solar space station. I was real into the outdoors back growing up, and was lucky enough to grow up on kind of a farm. I got turned into someone who I guess was more aware of the impact that humans can have. When one summer I kind of built an ecosystem in the creek in my backyard, and I installed all kinds of fish and amphibians, built this amazing riparian ecozone. And one of the neighbors, everybody in the neighborhood was in love with it. We had all this activity coming back to this once kind of destroyed creek. And one of the neighbors had poured the oil from their truck directly into the creek and destroyed everything that we had created. That kind of made me more aware of the impacts that we can have, and learning more and more about the impacts collectively across the planet related to, at the time it was pollution, not so much the discussion around climate change. It made me focus more and more on finding solutions to get us out of the mess that we're creating.
That's a beautiful story. You mentioned the International Space Station. What about the International Space Station captivated your interest?
I think the fact that there was a possibility for people to coexist somewhere so completely different, then learning the way they powered the station was through the sun. That really triggered something. It made me realize that the sun could be utilized. And if that's the case, then why aren't we doing that down here when we know that, coal and oil are creating all of these epic issues?
So, Patrick, growing up with a focus on sustainability and understanding that we can harness the sun's power, I wonder what career path in your youth you think you might go down, but you never actually did.
I was considering engineering. My family is largely an engineering family. My grandfather was a big metallurgist, and my sisters both went into engineering school. I was sort of reared up and I actually went into an engineering program at Virginia Tech my freshman year. I enjoyed it, and I'm built like an engineer, built to solve problems. However, the career path was a little, I guess, overwhelming or underwhelming when it came to the opportunity to learn and to really be more of a holistic designer, and overwhelming on like learning specific details on one arena or one problem. I just didn't like dissecting things down to that highly technical degree. I wanted to keep looking at the big picture and staying more involved in social progression and sales and marketing and kind of more the entrepreneurial chase. So there was a stint there for a while where I looked also at doing things in the medical field, which again felt similar in that you would focus very much on solving, sort of focusing on the symptom rather than really looking at the preventative issues.
Are you, like me, a engineering school dropout who migrated to business?
More or less. I actually dropped out. I went on the road and kind of lived out west and did the things I wanted to do. At the time, you're 19, 20, some snowboarding and rafting, and mountain bike and all that. And when I came back to school, I ended up focusing in areas where I was just very interested instead of business. It's funny, I'm in this role as a very successful entrepreneur now, but I'm not really a business person, and I haven't really went after business at any stage in my life. I've always been lucky enough to pursue the things I'm interested in. So in college, I studied geography, geology, biology, chemistry, and that's my degree. It's something completely unrelated to business and to the field that I'm now, leading.
So help me understand then the segue from geology, geography, pursuing those interests at an early age into a career that now has spanned nearly 2 decades in the solar industry, and not just in solar hot water. You have also dabbled in electric vehicles, and you've got LEED AP, which for those who aren't familiar, that's an energy efficiency and design protocol for buildings. And an AP is a practitioner who gets certified to design buildings to meet a certain global standard that was developed back in the late 90s. Help me understand then the pathway that got you into solar, where you spent a lot of time working on off-grid and solar ovens.
Solar is like the gateway drug for my engineering brain to begin building a solution set. I'm a systems guy and I'm kind of an energy guy. I wanted to look big picture, and I am constantly trying to reposition my lens to be as high as I can, looking at the entirety of our interaction and where's the biggest opportunity or the biggest issues to solve. So, when you get into solar, I found solar in the phone book while I was in college. I called the founder of this small emerging Ohio solar company. He says, sure. I show up on the job site and he hands me a trowel and we start, spackling a wall of concrete, and nothing to do with solar. But after working for him for 4 years, I got plenty of solar experience and plenty other, built a timber frame home, we're building greenhouses. I loved it all. Just loved the learning. And I wanted to constantly improve my understanding of systems. So when, build an off-grid solar electric system, and then we needed to filter water to keep the goats happy. I couldn't wait to learn more about gray water recycling. We had to build a barn to keep the chickens laying through the winter. So now I'm learning about super insulation. I went and lived in the Caribbean for years and learned a lot about isolated grids and the opportunity to integrate solar and electric vehicles. This stuff for me it's intoxicating to develop a solution set that I can apply, to whatever client needs. I never wanted to do the same thing over and over and get really good at that and bankroll. That's just me, and that's how I'm constructed. It's probably a flaw to be constantly interested in what's next and doing something different. I have a hard time doing things the same way twice.
That seems to go counterintuitive to the engineer mind and the systems thinking.
Yeah, I'm a pretty rudimentary engineer. I look at what's been done, and I'll often mimic what someone else is doing that I know that works. But I'm always looking for the place between. There's always that trifecta that we're trying to hit with every project or every product that we purchase, where it's like high quality, high performance, and low cost. So I'm good at finding that trifecta, which basically means I'm willing to try a lot of things and find compromise. Basically, solving problems quickly is kind of what I've turned into being the best at.
Living in the Caribbean, I presume off-grid, but it's not entirely clear to me that you were off-grid. I know that you did a lot of off-grid systems when you were installing solar in Florida and other places, but I'm wondering, what did the off-grid experience, and in particular your time in the Caribbean, help you understand about consumers and about how solar works that informs the way you now develop products?
Living off-grid is really difficult. And I would imagine any listener here that is doing that and knows, you're not living on solar, you're living on battery and some really sophisticated electronics. I think the biggest learning is hilarious. I'm going to say this, but I learned this kind of unique piece of wisdom that could be misconstrued, but basically there is no problem that you can't solve by simply lowering your standards. It's sort of it's ridiculous, but it's true. There's no problem that you can't solve by simply lowering your standards. Okay, so what are you lowering? What are your standards? So for example, like with GoSun right now, we're coming up with these water system solutions. And this is something that very much came from living in an island with a developing world infrastructure at the end of the line, where you're out of luck if, power or water goes out. We're creating a kitchen sink and a shower all from a tiny little USB powered pump. It pulls 2 or 3 watts and it pushes water out at about 1 liter per minute. So what standard did I lower there? Well, we're used to water at 10 times that flow rate when we're at home. When we drop that standard, all of a sudden it liberates all these other, it solves all of these other problems. We're using huge amounts of water. We got to make it fresh. We're heating that water before we shower with it. Huge amounts of energy. If we slow the flow rate down to 1/10, then we just reduced our problems tenfold.
How do you clean your hair in that low?
It works. It works. That's the wild thing. So, you got to watch your standards. You don't want to turn into a sloppy mess.
Did you innovate on, I know this is esoteric, but the nozzle itself and the way that pressure is applied or distributed?
That's right. Yeah. We did a ton of 3D printing. Again, we looked at what's already out there. We adapted from this series of products from Lock Line, which works on like robotic lines. Mm-hmm. And, bam, 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 one thing led to another, and we nailed it. And actually, this was something we were working on during the COVID pandemic about a year ago, when washing your hands was becoming super important yet again.
I want to talk a lot about how COVID impacted your business. Before we get there, I want to prime the pump with why GoSun exists, how you have raised money for it and what the market response has been. So I want to give folks a little bit more of a rounded picture of who Patrick is. One of the things that surprised me, you mentioned that you started this company, Brightfield Transportation in Asheville, putting in electric chargers. I identify with a lot of what you've said around being the innovator, the creator, the non-detail guy. I know that so many here are going to identify with that. Help me understand how you go from living off grid, NABCEP certified installer, working for other people, to starting an EV charging company a decade too soon, to starting GoSun. Can you just walk me down that path in a couple of minutes?
Sure. I always knew I wanted to work for myself. I spent the first decade of my career working for everybody and his brother, which I really enjoyed. And I'm glad that I didn't start my own thing until I was in my 30s. The learning in the 20s was super, super helpful to see how other people conducted business and themselves. So I was living in the Caribbean, working for a large institution, and received a notice from the government that said, hey, you guys can't work here. We had just really gotten set up and we were kicking butt, and we had clients like Lenny Kravitz and Mariah Carey.
What was it that you were doing?
We were basically designing and installing systems, and systems included mostly, solar, but also small wind, water and waste management.
And this is on some small island in the Caribbean. Are you at liberty to say where?
Yeah, in the Bahamas on an island called Eleuthera, but we were also, kind of traveling throughout the Caribbean. So, and we had clients like Atlantis, one of the largest developments in the Caribbean. And we're trying to do this like $2 million solar hot water system on their laundry facility, which would have saved them. You can't even believe that the ROI on this system was like, the return was like in 4 months or something. Because they're basically burning diesel, to make electricity to then heat the water. I mean, you just can't believe how inefficient some of the stuff is. So the opportunities down there were vast, but the political climate, the regulatory issues were also vast. So most of the projects never went forward. Anyway, we got this notice that I really couldn't be down there conducting any kind of business. And so that pushed me into working for myself overnight as kind of a renegade solar systems consultant. So a lot of the clients that wanted to keep things going forward, I could help them one way or another and collaborate with contractors. Like basically I'm down there, but I can tell people what to do or design systems, but I can't push the wrench. So all of a sudden I'm hiring buddies that are locals to install these systems. And so and then when I left the Caribbean for sort of family reasons, I came back to my home here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am doing the same thing. I'm a freelance consultant helping others figure out how to install solar. With that, some friends of mine, we've been talking for a long, long time about the coming electric vehicle advent. And one of my best buds started and ran a very successful bicycle shop, starting here in Cincinnati, then moving to Asheville. And so that's how we collaborated on, we're basically starting with electric bicycles, again, a decade early, and electric scooters, and then moving on up to electric motorcycles and neighborhood electric vehicles. And we were planning to turn the bike shop into this electric vehicle reseller. And then, I kind of brought in this, well, what if we built electric vehicle charging stations and powered them with the sun? And we got a grant from the Department of Energy. A lot of my career prior to GoSun was very grant to grant or incentive program to incentive program based. And I was one of the lucky guys that could travel for the project. I didn't own my own company and have 20 people to feed at home. So I followed the industry quite a bit, learned a lot. And that kind of gave me the ability to move quick, act quick, and work for myself.
For context, for those who are not looking at Patrick's LinkedIn account, Brightfield was 2008 to roughly 2012, at a time when Tesla was very much a hope and a dream. And organizations like Project Better Place were around trying to get electric charging in place. I just want folks to comprehend, contextualize some of how far ahead of the curve you have been in many of your endeavors.
And timing is an important one. And boy, are we lucky now as an industry to point at Tesla and to say, I'm doing this. Look at these guys. Their worth. It's helping to fuel the movement on. And we never had a unicorn that we could point at. So people didn't treat you with very much respect, or they didn't understand you or value you when you were trying to build solar electric vehicle infrastructure in 2008. It's true.
So Patrick, somewhere around 2015, 2016, you started thinking that there's a better way to deploy solar hot water and solar heating appliances, and that there perhaps would be a market, Amazon style, for these appliances as consumers are starting to adopt this sustainability mindset. Help me understand the initial phase of launching GoSun, from how you conceptualize the product to the team that you as a idea guy surround yourself with, and then how you went about funding the venture.
I was excited to get off the solar coaster. Again, that project by project level, and you'd put all this energy into a project that never would move forward. And a lot of my clients at the time were very financially oriented, and that was kind of peeling the humanity out of the work. So this muse, I had taken a solar hot water heater off of a roof and discovered that I could cook hot dogs. Long story short, the thing was the most amazing, sizzling. This is an evacuated tube solar system that was installed in the late 80s, actually, made in Toledo, Ohio. And that hot dog cooker just continued to come up in my life as like this fun invention. And I was doing a lot to figure out where my life path would go. Would I continue to do solar installs and consultations? Would I continue to launch startups? Did I want to be a restaurateur and sell solar restaurants? I discovered Kickstarter, a crowdfunding platform where you could take an idea and launch and see what would happen, kind of the ultimate way to test a market. So that muse turned into a huge project to try to get this idea of a first oven that we made was capable of cooking a meal for 2 in 20 minutes. And it was a very compact, simple product. In fact, it's still one of our number one selling products, called the GoSun Sport. And I wanted to get it up onto Kickstarter and see what the market would yield. Very few people in my immediate sphere were necessarily excited about that, or thought I was onto something. They kind of thought I was kind of a harebrained, half-baked idea. But I knew that there was something in it, and it took me about 2 years to really put the special sauce. So I brought in an industrial designer, began to kind of build a brand, focus more on the marketing aspects. We launched the product. I was working at the time as a freelance consultant for about 5 companies, and they all knew that I was doing this. I had about 1,000 emails from friends and people I've met in the industry, and I sent the product out onto Kickstarter. That first day we did $13K. After 7 weeks, we did $200,000.
Wow!
And I told everybody, all of my clients, I said, "Look, I'm going to go focus on this 100%." They said, "Great, we know that's your thing." And with that, I stepped off the solar coaster and went into GoSun, basically building products, consumer level products that ran on the sun.
What year was that?
2013.
Amazing. You must have been one of the first solar products on Kickstarter.
There was a few of the micro solar lighting products. But yeah, we were kind of the first successful solar oven, basically, to almost ever hit the interwebs.
I remember you did not just Kickstarter, but Indiegogo, and you said that something like 75% of your revenue in the first few years was from that crowdfunding. Is that right?
Yeah. So again, it sort of instilled this business model, which is you better innovate, you better build it quick, you've got to get something interesting out in the market and shipped to people ASAP. That business model is still kind of what we live and breathe on.
What do you think companies who haven't embraced obviously consumer product mindset could learn from crowdfunding in particular?
I think the piece around video is really helpful, and particularly the first 5 seconds of a video. As we all know, our attention spans are limited, and we're getting so much content thrown at us so quickly. If it's not compelling right now, I'm going to scroll past it. It's important that just about any company figure out how to really speak to a consumer. And I think the main message there is you need to add value. You need to come up with a way to educate, inform, and help them really understand the how, the why, the where that your product or service will take them.
That is really cool. I love the idea that through exercises like raising money through Kickstarter, even if that's not your main gig, right? That's not your main activity. It can be a forcing function at a marketing level to test your value proposition. And
big time.
Yeah, big time. And understanding how to convey your message in 5 seconds such that you hook someone enough to stay another 5 seconds and another 5 seconds. How long is a winning crowdfunding video?
Typically, a minute and a half does the job. I often want to spend 3 or 5 minutes because I want to explain how it all plugs into this ecosystem or show all the different use cases of the product. So I'm constantly trying to get the red pen out and figure out, how do I chop certain segments out and get down to that crystallized minute and a half is kind of the golden ratio.
Now, you went from raising revenue in the form of crowdfunding to raising equity using Seed Invest and Start Engine back in 2017, 2019, when many in our ecosystem didn't believe that equity could be raised from the crowd in that way. We had one of our other friends from USolar on talking about how they were one of the largest Start Engine equity funding rounds. I'm sure you're familiar with that. You've done more than nearly $2 million in equity crowdfunding through the two platforms. What have you learned about equity crowdfunding that we can adapt to our businesses?
Yeah, I think it's all about the crowd. It's all about your people. People want to see this stuff succeed. And it's legitimate when you launch your idea on Kickstarter and it's half-baked and overpriced or whatever. People buy it and they're willing to stick with you and be the early adopters or the visionaries of your vision and carry that. And they're willing to receive a product that has a crappy user manual and doesn't fit in their hands right, whatever. They realize that you aren't Apple or you don't have to make things perfect. So the same kind of applies over into the equity crowdfunding space. It's as much as a business investment as it is a heart-centered philanthropic investment. I want to see this business model or this concept move forward. Here's $1,000 in support. And if I ever get that back, that would be great. If I got it back 3-fold or 5-fold, that's mind-blowing. But if I never get it at all, that's okay too. I'm glad that these people are out there doing that. And I don't think that is something that the rest of the finance world understands and deals with. And that's what we're seeing now with, well, I don't want to get too esoteric here, but I think we're finding that the power of the crowd, the power of basically us connected on social media and this platform that you've created it has more intrinsic value and far more economic importance than we realize. The GameStop is kind of an interesting argument towards that. Or just look at Tesla's valuation. I mean, it has so much to do with the fact that there's a narrative that Elon Musk has built in and around himself that's all about saving the planet and just being bold and brave and taking big risks. I mean, all of it ends up being very lovable. And these are things you can't measure, the sort of the gut, the human heart. And I think that that we want to do more in that space as an industry. I know it sounds wishy-washy and gooey, but I honestly, I think that more of us should work from our hearts and work from that authentic place, because that is really attractive.
Man, I totally agree with you on that. And we certainly enjoy conversations here with heart-centered entrepreneurs on SunCast. Appreciate having that insight into how you think about being a leader as well.
Back in February, fellow solar warrior Ravi Mickelson revealed in episode 345 that the world's top banks funneled nearly $2 trillion into fossil fuels since the Paris Accord signing, despite their lip service towards climate and renewables. If that gets under your skin as much as it did mine, then let Ravi's fast-growing fintech banking platform, Atmos, help you align your purpose with your pocketbook, your cause with your cash. And you can know that it's never supporting interests or industries misaligned with your personal mission. Start your financial journey at joinatmos.com/SunCast. Hey, by now I'm sure you've probably heard about our mission-minded program, getting your dream job in clean energy in 12 weeks. Our current cohort has given us great feedback and kudos, I might add, as they go through the material and our coaching calls. You can see more about what this program looks like at suncast.vip. That's our brand spanking new webpage to talk about the mission-minded program. That's also where you can send friends, family, neighbors, colleagues that you know who might need a little extra help, a little guidance to find that dream job in clean energy. Our mission-minded program cohort is ongoing right now. We are taking a waiting list for our next cohort. I'd encourage you to do two things. One, send anyone you know that might be interested. Two, those of you who are so inclined, please go check out suncast.vip and email me, nico@mysuncast.com.
COVID in particular, we mentioned earlier, had an impact. It rocked the industry, it rocked the world, rocked many, many businesses. I'd love to hear how, in particular, COVID affected GoSun.
So COVID was a bit of a windfall for GoSun. We kind of doubled down on meeting essential needs, which is kind of the core of GoSun. So it's not just cooking, but we have cooling, power and lighting. And then during the pandemic, we accelerated development of a water purification and sanitation system, basically a portable kitchen sink. I did a ton of research at the beginning of the pandemic, something, again, we touched on earlier here, but I was always interested in how do we use as little water as possible. So I was at the sink every time I was washing my hands, which we all did a ton a year ago. I was trying to use as little water as possible and then get a feel for what that flow rate was. And then we built a product around that. And like I said, it's around 1 liter a minute. You can get your hands totally clean. You can wash your hair. You can take a shower. And so we pushed that product out. It took us about 2 months to get it onto Indiegogo. It's called the GoSun Flow. We launched that in May of last year. But basically, sales across the board were really strong because GoSun resonates with like recreation and preparedness needs.
I'm curious as well, Patrick, as you've said that you don't like to do things the same way twice. And if I take a look at the GoSun website, it's remarkable. It looks very much like an Amazon style e-commerce site and marketplace. Kudos, you guys have done a phenomenal job over the last 7 years of developing a really nice looking brand and really what look like very well engineered products with great reviews. Obviously, 5 million in crowdfunding Kickstarter campaigns is nothing to snuff at. How do you think now about products that you want to bring to market? And also, how do you versus your team reel in the idea machine so that you can only focus on those products that have a likelihood of succeeding?
A lot of it goes back to a bit of my origin there where we were asking about the life in the Caribbean. Having lived a lot of that time off grid and learning the difficulties of it, and meeting essential needs across, what do you need in a day, right? You need to have a coffee, make some waste, lights, fans, take a shower, cook the food, keep the food cold. Doing all of this on conventional technology is pretty cumbersome and energy intense. So there's massive, massive opportunities. So we look at that and say, okay, we've built this amazing cooker. Now, what else is needed? Okay, so we built these portable refrigerators. We found technology with brushless DC compressors and incredible controls. So you can now have a portable fridge that pulls 35 watts as opposed to like 100 watts using those old thermoelectric versions. And we're iterating more on that to try to make it more user-friendly, more efficient. And then, we love watching what's happening with lithium, with battery technology and the ability to take like a folding solar panel and plug that in and have, 2 kilowatts on one arm. And so that's something we're pushing more and more because that's an obvious. There's a lot of other people in that space. I think the difference between GoSun and a lot of the other kind of power bank, like Goal Zero is a good example, Jackery, they focus on, making an amazing power bank with, all kinds of ports. You figure out how you want to use it. We focus more on like the essential need. So we focus more on things as though they are appliances. What is the need that we're trying to meet? That's a good place to start. Then the other thing, my sister now works for General Electric, and she's done through all this Six Sigma training. She and I are constantly comparing notes. I'm kind of the opposite when it comes to, they're very process oriented. They're very top down, organizationally heavy. And we're kind of very laterally structured with respect to power. It goes on. We're very nimble. We're kind of messy. We don't have a great process involved and everything. But what I did take from her is basically an optimization spreadsheet, kind of a way to make decisions that are difficult. And I use this all the time now. Long story short is that you have all of your options, and you'll put those on your y-axis, and then on your columns you'll put in different values, and you'll want to rank things based on their profitability, their difficulty in manufacturing, their alignment with your team, the alignment with the market, blah blah blah. And since our gut and our brain can do a lot to make a decision and generally kind of knows the answer, it's really helpful to break things down into individual assessments, essentially, and kind of breaking apart the values of each of these options. And then you can weight the values differently. So if you decide that this is the time to be profitable, so we're going to put much more points around profitability, and we don't care as much about some of these other aspects, then that'll skew the answers. But you just try to be as honest as you can as you fill out this optimization spreadsheet. So we have this backlog of maybe 20 pretty solid inventions, and I go into this probably quarterly into this giant spreadsheet, and I just sort of change the numbers or I'll add a couple new ideas and see how they shake out, and then we'll pick from the top.
That's amazing. I'd love to know, Patrick, what do you feel like is your number one headache or the roadblock that you continually have to go around as an entrepreneur?
The biggest challenge is with people, okay? And that doesn't sound right, but basically, how do you build a great team and align efforts and kind of divide up labor and keep everyone engaged, committed, incentivized? So that's part of the entrepreneurial path that I didn't sign up for, that I didn't know. And I went from kind of a solo, for the 5 years prior to starting GoSun, I was kind of a solo freelance consultant, starting a couple small companies. And then I launched GoSun with just a couple of buddies that I'm working with, paying very easily. And then all of a sudden I've got 10 people. Now we're at about 15 people. And we don't really have like a lot of management, there's not a middle manager. Almost everyone kind of speaks directly to me to some extent. And so that's kind of the crux, or that's been the biggest challenge. And we have the most amazing team. I mean, and I have, so the best people I could imagine. So, but nonetheless, handling the interface, I mean, we need to do more to understand what is it, the Enneagram, how does one person need to hear or speak versus another, how do we collab? And COVID has been tough. I mean, we haven't really hung out and seen each other for like a year. And that's stressful on the team because now it's like everything is very much just, did you do this? Did you do that? It's very task oriented versus kind of let's get together and really remember why we're doing this and remember the joy.
You mentioned Enneagram. Have you done that level of personality analysis on your team to see how folks communicate better?
I haven't. And I plan to do that sooner than later.
Yeah, it's something that we've found incredibly helpful. And for those who are unfamiliar, there are kind of 3 different tests right now. There are really, I'll give you 4 that work. And they kind of work on different levels. So everybody's probably familiar with Myers-Briggs. I think it's MBFT, MBTF. I can't remember exactly what the acronym is. But if you go to 16personalities.com, that's a free Myers-Briggs test. And that's your typical, I'm an ENFP. I have a lot of clients that are INTJ or ENTJ because opposites attract. But Enneagram gives you a bit more in depth about your proclivities, right? The ways that you could show up in different environments. And then one that I really like a lot and one that you might consider in the work environment, Patrick, as I'm going to say better, but it is simply different assessment of how people like to communicate and how they like to be communicated with and what their core skill is that they bring to the table. And that's the DISC profile, DISC. And a tool that I use often that's free to use, and it's also a little magic secret weapon to plug into your LinkedIn, is called Crystal Knows, CRYSTAL Knows, KNOWS.com. I used as a paid version, actually, and I recommend it to all my clients. And then the 4th is this one called Colby A, and I was introduced to that by a client because one of their coaches in the past recommended it to them. And Colby A is very good for founders and co-founders in particular to know their strengths and weaknesses and how they can participate in growing the company together as leaders. So 4 different easy ways to assess your own and your team's personality styles and sort of work styles. The Enneagram is by far the best kind of get to know yourself tool. A lot of folks are familiar with Myers-Briggs, and there's 1,000,001 comparisons. How an ENFP can work with an INTJ. So very good. 16 personalities does a good job with that. Crystal Knows, I think, is the best for a free DISC assessment that also gives you some sociograph about people that you're interacting with. And it's a secret weapon for me in meetings. And then Colby A is a great assessment for founders that want to get to know better their co-founders and how they can play well with one another.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I love how intentional I see that you are about your business and about how you're growing it. So anything I can do to help there, I'm happy to. We're going to have to turn the corner here towards home and wrap this up in a few minutes, but I'd love to know if you have any key lessons or takeaways that you've gleaned from mentors in your career.
Definitely. And I was very lucky to attract a mentor who is now our VP of development, Gary Starr. Gary had he's 40 plus years of a career in clean technology, solar and electric vehicles, went head to head with Elon Musk back in 2007 and 8. He's been just a huge help. And this is someone who's truly built as an entrepreneur. I don't know, again, if myself, I would throw myself in the category, but his sort of friendly friction, just pushing and pushing and pushing for something to get done has helped GoSun just tremendously. I'm sure we wouldn't be where we are without him. And so that, when things are pushing and difficult, and when someone is the squeaky wheel, you have to really look and say, is this good or bad? Is this what I want? Or do I want this to be more of a lifestyle business? I want this to be easier, and I've pretty much always said, I'll go for the difficult path. I'll take the challenge. I'll learn the stuff I don't want to learn, do the things I don't want to do. And then, we've learned also to take a lot of risks along the way. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. I do want to go back to the comment, that I mentioned on lowering our standards, because I think that could be misconstrued, especially on a lot of the listeners are, it's imperative that you build a system that's going to do, that's going to be around for 30, 40, 50 years. And I am not advocating that you cut corners and you build crappy systems. It's more, again, kind of a lens that you would look at the whole thing and say, what would this look like if it was easy? And I think, a lot of this won't be up to us to, a lot of this is government leadership. And when I look at how quickly China can build a hospital or a railway or you name it, there's something very efficient. I mean, I'm always in pursuit of efficiency. And I think we do a poor job in the States. I think there's too many people that are more interested in a paycheck than, getting it done the easiest and best way. And so I think more that question is like a systemic, how do we lower the standard to maintain, a good quality of life and maintain the basic comforts and performance that we've become to know, but do it in the most efficient manner with much, much less resources. And I think that we're stuck to some extent. And that's the sad part to me, to watch. Like, I know that there's solutions out there to solve all of our problems, primarily this epic climate problem that we're all facing. But it's really humans that are the impediment to that. I mean, it's our mentality. It's our entitlement. We believe culturally we should have these things. We need these things. We have to have these things. And in reality, all you have to do is make a few small perspective shifts and a few small decisions, and you alleviate, more than 50% of your burden.
Man, I feel like I could speak with you on so many different topics for many, many more hours. I've really enjoyed getting a chance to learn from you. I have a few more questions that I always like to ask, and then I'm going to have to release you back to the wild, Patrick. But before I do, you are in the business of creating amazing climate tech products. I like to ask, and have been lately asking in the last 12 to 36 weeks, what do you feel is the coolest climate tech that you've seen come on the market? Maybe that's even a GoSun product. I don't know. You
said climate tech? Oh, right. Like green tech. Excuse me.
Yeah. So clean tech, climate tech, something approaching solving the climate solutions that we need.
I'm super excited about the combination that we're seeing with data and mobility. It's no wonder that Tesla has the valuation that it does. I think autonomous vehicles are going to be, a very, very major part of our future. But I think transit in general, mobility in general, needs to be done way easier and more efficiently. So I think we're going to get there. America's again a bit of a laggard, but I just think it's really exciting to see how electronic controls and IT and motors and spinny things are all kind of coming together, and efficiencies are being found.
I hope that folks will check out all of the gadgets and motors and spinny things on the GoSun website. We'll give you a chance in a moment to brag a little bit more about that and how people can find it. But before we do that, are there any books that you routinely recommend or that you've read that just rocked your world and you feel like others should check out?
I think someone who's not getting as much credit as they deserve is Richard Branson, Losing My Virginity. There's somebody who, in my opinion, really lives it and breathes it. He's going there. And I think that's something I'm trying to take more to heart is really, being the first person to field test or live with the technology that we create. And there's somebody who's here now. I mean, if I look in the past, I love the Buckminster Fuller, Nikola Tesla, Elon Musk is obviously the poster child to much of this, and he's getting all the attention anyway. So you guys already know about him.
Yeah, we love Elon around here. Talk about it a lot. And EV, electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles, are certainly having their day in the sun. But I concur with you that one of the unsung heroes of the entrepreneurial world in modern era is Richard Branson. He's a hero of mine, someone that I certainly look up to and hope to meet one day, and have really enjoyed learning from him through the years. One of my favorite quotes from Richard is, train folks so that they're good enough to leave, and treat them such that they'll never want to. Do you have a morning routine or a regular, consistent habit in your life that influences how you show up?
I do an ancient Tibetan practice that's called the 5 Tibetan Rites. I'll do that every morning. Kind of just gets my body pumped up and ready to roll. And then I'll do some Vipassana meditation. I'm not doing 2 hours of morning routine. I get about 20 minutes of calm and then, then it's time for coffee and catch up.
Are you an email first thing in the morning or push it off for a couple of hours?
I push it off for probably an hour, and I'll wait till I'm up for a good bit before I really get into engaging. I'll spend the first 20 minutes or the first, my first deluge of media will often be on things that aren't heavy. So I'll look at, what's the latest product launch on Kickstarter or Indiegogo.
Man, you're a product of the product right there. I love that.
I love what I'm doing with creating products, and through the creation of products, there's so many stories and spins that I think it's kind of it's basically built for me. I am truly an inventor.
That's so cool. I love it. Well, folks are no doubt at this point wondering how they can check out your inventions. So, Patrick, where should folks go to check out more about GoSun and potentially even procure some of these amazing products that you've kickstarted?
Well, thanks, Nico. We've got a website at GoSun.co. Since we love what you're doing so much and we love this audience, these solar pioneers, we created a discount code on the site, GoSun.co. You enter it at the checkout. The code is SunCast, and that's going to get them 20% off.
Man, I love that. That's so generous of you. Thank you very much for that. So for those who may, like I did, go to GoSun.com, it's .co, the second most popular top-level domain in the world right now. So GoSun.co. And as you just heard for the first time, as I did, that Patrick and the team are going to give you, dear SunCast listener, a discount of 20%, $1 out of $5. That's amazing. If you just use the checkout code SunCast. Wow, that's really cool, man. I'm going to take you up on that because I've got my eye on a few things over there as well, including that sweet camping table, solar camping table. I may have to just pass the code along to my wife for Father's Day. Well, let's end today with a bold prediction, as we always do, Patrick. What one thing do you see happening in the market that maybe nobody else is tracking? What's in your crystal ball, Patrick Sherwin?
I think the need for resiliency is going to increase. If you look at what's recently happened down in Texas with the ice, the cold, we're in a pretty fragile situation with our existing grid infrastructure. And I think for how it's relevant with your listeners is, I think battery-based systems, isolated grids are going to be really popular. We're seeing this spike with solar generators, but we build things for resilience, and so we see an advent of solar appliances. So literally, appliances are getting more and more efficient. Battery technology is getting better and better. Solar is getting better and better, and so the appliance itself will have its own ability to fuel itself.
That is fantastic. And I look forward to the day where society is fueling itself and we are leveraging and harnessing the renewable power all around us and building resiliency into our everyday life. As you pointed out, our friends, many listening right now down in Texas, had firsthand experience with something that their forefathers did not. So I pray that you're right, that resiliency will become commonplace, that it will find its place in our world of consumerism, and that in some way we will have GoSun to thank for that. Patrick Sherwin is the founder and CEO of GoSun. You can find more at GoSun.co. Don't forget, SunCast at checkout will get you 20% off. Mr. Patrick Sherwin, thank you for sharing your insights and your story with us here on SunCast.
Thank you, Mr. Nico Johnson. You're a phenomenal host. I can't wait to listen to more of your podcast and see how this evolves over time.
All right, Solar Warriors. Well, that's a wrap on today's conversation, but it does not have to be the end of our discussion together. If you've been listening for the first time, I would love to ask for a quick favor right inside of the podcast player that you're using. Would you just give us a rating? 1 to 5, the choice is yours. Either you loved it or you didn't. And if you did love it, would you give us a review as well? Because that's how some other folks like you are going to find this podcast. Maybe you searched solar or clean energy, as so many others are doing today. And I'd love it if you would help others discover this podcast as well. If you are eager to keep learning, well, then you, my fellow Philomath, can find the resources and highlights from this and every other discussion on SunCast, along with the social media links, book recommendations, and so much more at the blog at mysuncast.com. Since you're already going to be online, would you also take a minute and share your thoughts about this episode? You could do that either in a comment on the LinkedIn post that you'll no doubt easily find about this episode, or simply, shouting us out on Twitter. You can find, again, the social media links for myself and for Patrick on that blog post. Give us a shout online. Let us know what you learned and how you're going to be taking this episode forward in your own life. Share it with your mother, your baker, the candlestick maker, anybody in your neighborhood that you think would appreciate the story of GoSun and the other many stories that we share here on SunCast. If you will stick around and join our newsletter, of course, you will know the next episode that comes out. They come out every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday is typically tactical in nature, going into some aspect of the clean energy revolution that you need to know about. And on Thursdays, long episodes like this one, where we regale you with the story of an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, or clean tech leader, and how they got where they are and the problems they are trying to solve along the way. Thanks once again to our sponsors and to you, SunCast Tribe, for helping make all this content worth it and free for listeners to enjoy. You can find out more about our sponsors and how you could partner with us to reach thousands of listeners every week at mysuncast.com/sponsor. Remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.